Bambiz Marketing presents Elder Law Growth, the podcast that helps elder law and estate planning attorneys attract clients without wasting time or money. I'm your host, Amy Hurst. Let's dive in.
There's been a couple law firms who have created a custom field or indicator of some sort on a matter or case, indicating how the client would like to be communicated to. And I find this problematic because then you have all these different means of communications throughout all of your cases. You have to recognize, yes, you're providing a legal service to your client, but your law firm's also a business. And so trying to track down how to communicate with the client on each particular case can be cumbersome. The more exceptions that you have for your cases, the more costly they will be.
That was Randa Prendergast, the owner of Mrs. June Legal, and she has helped law firms for over 15 years save time and money through efficient workflows. In this podcast episode, Randa is going to share her top tips in how you can do this at your own law firm, DIY style. She's going to walk us through what to do at the very beginning of a case, all the way to what you should do after the case is finished, and all of those subtle steps in between that will free up more of your time and keep more money in your pocket rather than it going down the drain to insufficient systems. Let's dive in. Everybody wants to free up time. Mm-hmm. And I know on our end for marketing, that is the number one issue that attorneys are facing right now, is that they just don't have time. They don't have time. And so when I saw that about you, about how you free up time, I was like, I want to get Randa on the show.
Love it.
And see what you can share with our elder law and estate planning attorneys here on this podcast episode. And I just want to know more about that. Like, how are you able to go into a law firm and help them free up time?
It's not just about, making sure you have your bookkeeper and making sure you're filing your taxes, but they have to think about marketing. That marketing leads to, what do we do with someone when they come into our office, their intake process, which leads to how do we provide the best service through their cases. And we really focus on using automation and just being direct of what you're doing in your processes, so there's no question and you can provide the best service.
So it almost sounds like you take all the hiccups out.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Yes, we do. My favorite thing is, I say, and this is a good story, this always happens. Well, I get law firm owners, well, every case is different. Well, not really. The process is the same, right? The process, what you're doing is exactly the same. So let's capture that. And then you have the opportunity for those one-offs, right? Those unique situations. But what you're doing on a case, especially for estate planning, is exactly the same. Well, it's not. So then I'm like, okay, tell me what's different. And so we go through their process. There might be items like, well, sometimes we schedule a call here and sometimes we don't. And I'm like, well, how often? Like, is it 50%, 70%? Oh, 70%. Okay, well, let's just write it into your process, because you're doing it 70% of the time. More likely than not, you're going to do it. So we get some pushback. All attorneys think every single case is unique and that it can't be documented and that they shouldn't write certain things into their process. But there's terms like, if applicable, that you can use throughout your process too.
Sure. So that's usually the biggest drawback to documenting all of this, is that every case is different, or that they don't feel like that they can that they're allowed to write that down. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I feel like they feel like they can't write that down, because I don't know if they feel like maybe that they're turning their clients into a number if they do that, but I don't think that that's necessarily true, because I feel if you document your processes and use a process on a case, you can devote more one-on-one time with your client, so they don't feel like that.
Sure. So say that I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney, and I just opened up my law firm. I'm not really sure what I'm doing and things are going haywire. Can you think of a time when you've come into a law firm kind of like me and help take all of the hiccups out and make everything? It sounds like you just streamlined everything, the automations, the hiccups, the bumps in the road, to make everything from the beginning to the end. It sounds like you just make everything smooth. So can you tell me a story of how you were able to transform a law firm like that?
Sure. Especially with kind of like estate planning and more transactional type of law, people don't give too much thought to it. They think it's pretty easy. They don't put too much thought into their process, but there's a lot that goes into it. So the first thing we ask is, what's your ideal timeline to complete an estate plan? Because a lot of times attorneys don't think about that ideal timeline, and they should be, because it also relates to how much they charge a client too. Right. So we talk about ideal timeline for transactional type of law. Estate planning is a really good example. We talk about what information you need to know to do the estate plan, because a lot of times we find that attorneys are not collecting enough information at the beginning and starting work.
The intake process, right?
Yes. And they're doing this back and forth that costs you a lot of money.
So much time and money.
And if you don't have any court deadlines, right? It's an ideal timeline. So I'm always like, either get the information up front, confirm you have everything that you need, then you start your drafting, or better yet, put the client's feet to the fire, tell them, we're going to schedule this call. You're going to need A, B, and C on this call so we can get all the information for you so we can adhere to this timeline. I like giving the client a timeline because they know what to expect. It's kind of like homework. And then if it's all said and done and they don't have their information, it's really it's on the client at that point that their stuff's not getting done.
Boy, that timeline. I'm remembering talking with an elder law attorney about Medicaid and how he said that when he's able to give a timeline to especially the people who are calling needing a help in 24 hours because their mom or dad need to be in a dementia home and they're desperate, having that timeline of saying, I need this, this, and this by this time so I can help you with that.
Yes.
And he said just the relief of that homework. I mean, you wouldn't think about how homework would actually help someone, but as in his words, he said it actually gave them hope, something that the ball was rolling, he gave them homework and gave them a timeline. So when you said timeline, I was like, that's so important.
With that too, like naturally in your case processes, you typically have like client touch points because you get information and you need to share information, or if it's if it's a probate issue, they have to be in court, or you need to file something or share something that's been filed. So there's that natural client touch point. But I also like to recommend, I'll more for probate and guardianships and stuff like that, where there's court involved, to write into your process a client touch point, a monthly client touch point. It can be done by the attorney. It can be done by a paralegal. Hey, do you have any questions? Has there been change in circumstances? You still need to get us this information so we can do that. Here's your upcoming hearing or our upcoming due date for something.
It sounds like communication is key here.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want them calling the office too and interrupting your other cases that you're working on and your other workflows because they want an update. What
not to do in your line of work, because you've been doing this for 15 years, Randa. So I'm like, she's got to have a pretty good story of what not to do when it comes to optimizing the case workflows.
There's been a couple law firms who have created a custom field or indicator of some sort on a matter or case, indicating how the client would like to be communicated to. And I find this problematic because then you have all these different means of communications throughout all of your cases. you have to recognize, yes, you're providing a legal service to your client, but your law firm's also a business. And so trying to track down how to communicate with the client on each particular case can be cumbersome. The more exceptions that you have for your cases, the more costly they will be. One thing I don't want you to do is let the client choose how you're going to communicate with them. It's because then that not only you have to figure out how to communicate with that client, then you have to figure out how to document that communication depending on which way, because you want to document everything, and then if they don't respond to that communication, do you reach out to them in any other communication or form? So what you want to do is, as a whole, you want to think about how you want to communicate to your client, the easiest way to do it and the best way to document it. And then set that as your policy and make that known. This is how we operate at our law firm.
And it makes that intake process so much smoother. So would Clio be something that you recommend as something law firms could use? Like what would the setup be for someone who can't afford your services?
Sure. So my case, Practice Panther, Clio, they're all very good. They all do a really good job of offering like training. So you can like DIY. I just want you to start by, this is what I do from the beginning of a case to the end of the case. Even if it's like a bullet point checklist, and then utilizing some type of task system within that case management system to identify that process.
It's hard to put it into terms of like money and numbers, but can you tell me of a time when you really made a strong impact on the law firm?
Sure. We do a lot of billing processes and collection processes. And so that's where you can really see the significance in cash flow increase, but with the law firm. So we talk a lot about cash flow for the law firm, retainers, not starting work before the flat fee has been paid and the retainer agreement has been signed. That happens quite frequently.
Because it's true. At least the attorneys that we work with, there's so much, they want to make sure that their clients are happy. So they'll, what's the word? They'll overperform to please them, make them happy, and not take care of their side of things.
Correct. Yes. So, and that's like a domino effect that has, that comes with high AR, that comes with inconsistent billing processes. So anytime we work with a law firm to do a billing process, now this is an average because it just depends on what law firm, like what the status is of their billing. If they have a ton of AR, if they have a hard set, difficult time with money or money mindset, and if they have some pushback on what they think their clients would like or not like. But typically our billing process takes about 12 weeks, but you're going to see in the first 30 to 60 days, a significant increase in your cash flow. There's two ways that we like to suggest for a no AR law firm. We go over both models. We implement billing processes around those models. We implement consistent billing cycles. A lot of times we can even offer a billing clerk to do your billing. So you take the emotion out of billing. There's a lot of emotion in billing.
Oh gosh, especially in elder law and estate planning.
Yes. So if you just use a billing clerk that just sees names and numbers, the emotion is removed. They're not working on the case. They don't know what's going on in particular with the case. And then you have strict retainer collection processes or with, strict processes to withdraw from a case.
Interesting. Wow. I'm going back to the point that you were talking about how the intake process and making sure that everything is communicated the same way to their clients, making sure there's only one system. What would be another takeaway that you would suggest besides making all the communication one form for your law firm?
Sure. Identify who your ideal client is, your ideal avatar. Where do they live? How old are they? How much money do they make? Are they family people? Are they people, that are just elderly and have no family? Like, who are they? In your mind, identify who that is. Then when you're ready to do your intake, you have qualifying questions that line up with that ideal person. And if they don't meet those standards, then they're not your ideal client.
Absolutely. That could save so much time. Like, talk about like freeing time for law firms, just that in itself, to have that clarity in the beginning for whoever's answering the phone, to have those intake questions or the onboarding questions of, do they even match who I want to serve?
Yes.
So it sounds like a lot of the hiccups are up front.
Setting an expectation and identifying who you want to work with.
Are there any hiccups that you work with that are near the end of the workflow for the case?
There's a lot of times we go into a law firm and there's like open cases on their system, and it's like, how can you concentrate or identify which ones are open and active if you have a list of 500 cases because you've never closed one in your system? I don't know, maybe they feel like the end of it is insignificant of actually closing it in their system and moving their stuff to a folder. And yeah, it's only a few tasks and it seems insignificant, but it becomes out of control pretty quickly, especially if you're trying to pull certain reports or filter certain things in your system. You're getting a lot of things that aren't active. So, maybe like either having a case manage or a case closing procedure or task list, or just even going through, putting a block on your calendar monthly to go through it and just do it. So I do have a client right now. He has like 700 open cases open in his system.
Gosh, man, that sounds like an organizational nightmare.
It is. And so he's got a full-time paralegal, and she's been great. And she says to me, Randa, I can't find anything or filter anything or search anything because there's too much information in here that's not needed. So she's spending a great amount of time just shifting through all of this stuff that's not relevant anymore.
Oh, talk about money down the drain.
Yes. So that's costing her a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, that definitely, it does have an impact. It also has an impact too, if you're looking at it from a billing standpoint in AR, like if there's a case that's closed or should be closed, like and they owe you money, like making a decision on, is it collectible? Is it not collectible? And coming up with a plan too on what you're going to do with it. 700
open cases.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that computer isn't fried yet.
Yeah. So she has been slow. I gave her a system. I was like, set a working block for yourself. I mean, you can pretty easily identify if a case is active or not by what's in the file and stuff like that. So, making a list of the matters that still owe money, the people that still owe money, moving their documents to a closed folder, closing the matter in your system, having them on a list for potential collections. Because closing it in your system doesn't mean you don't have access to it. It just means it's not visible, and it's not going to be visible in your reports or your filtering or anything like that. So it's not like you're getting rid of files or anything like that. But so yeah, if you have that problem, definitely commit 30-45 minutes a week to just going through each matter and setting it aside.
So you're the owner of the Mrs. June Legal.
Mm-hmm.
And your story on the other podcast was so great. And I was like, this is so fantastic. Tell me about the story behind Mrs. June Legal.
Oh, sure. So, I really like the 50s and 60s housewife vibe. I think that 50s and 60s housewives, they're really put together women and very kind and gracious, but they're very firm and they run a really tight ship at home. So my Miss June Legal is inspired by June Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver. And what's interesting is, so we kind of run Miss June Legal like the Cleaver household. Like, she sets the schedule. She's very gracious and kind, but she's very firm on her expectations. And so that's how we are with our clients. We're very firm about our expectations and what they expect from us and what we expect from them. Very clear communication. We're not jerks, but we will call you out if you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing to help yourself.
Do you have any resources on your website that would be helpful for law firms just to get started?
We have some really good affiliates for softwares that we recommend. So my case is on there and Clio is on there. 1Password is another good one. That's to organize all of your logins and to make sure you don't have the same login for everything so you don't get hacked.
We use that here at Bambiz. Okay. It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely need that too. And it does not cost a lot. But the best resource, honestly, is going to be just book a discovery call with me. It's free. I can ask you a ton of questions about your law firm and your process and give you some direction. That doesn't mean you have to work with me. I love the go-giver approach of just giving you information. And if you feel that you want to do it on your own, great. If you feel, hey, I'd rather give this to you and learn with you, then I'm happy to work with you. But it doesn't have to be a commitment to me in any way, shape, or form. You can subscribe to our newsletter on missjunelegal.com. You'll get notifications like about this podcast that comes out and any other podcast that we do, which is awesome. And then we're going to also have some guest blog posts from really like the experts that are legal adjacent, other people in the industry. That would be very helpful. Everyone that's going to be part of that community has that go-giving kind of mind of, we just want you to have the information. So it's not going to be salesy. It'll be fun, things that you can apply in your law firm right away. So yeah, there'll be a lot of fun stuff in there. And I just appreciate your time today and allowing me to hang out with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Randa.
Thanks for listening to the Elder Law Growth Podcast, the place to be for all things marketing for elder law and estate planning law firms. If you liked this podcast, please leave us a review wherever you are listening to this podcast. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to bambiz.net and book a free call with us today.